Hey folks, I went to Maker Faire Bay Area 2019 at the San Mateo County Event Center, and while it's been maybe 10 years since I went, it's changed a lot. It's gotten pretty corporate, but there was still some cool stuff. I really like the mixed reality Raceway. You basically control an RC car from inside a cockpit. Very cool. I also like the drone setup. Basically, it's meant to be flying drones through hoops and doing little tricks and such, but I saw a lot of people using it like Robot Wars, trying to smash their drones into each other. And, I'm always really excited by drone technology that's used for purposes other than military, so I definitely enjoyed that a lot. Don't crash your drone into the floor, people. I also really like the Beat Saber selfie booth. Beat Saber, if you haven't played it, is kind of like a VR version of Rock Band or Guitar Hero, except you're sort of swinging lightsabers at notes as they come in, and this mixed reality setup had the player in front of a green screen, which was then composited into the game so everybody could watch. Really cool. Also, totally enjoyed the Vintage Computer Friends booth. They had all kinds of really cool old school computer stuff here. A couple of Vectrexes, they had Atari 800, Atari 400, the original IBM PCs 5150s. They also had a Poly 88, which I've never seen before in my life. Commodore CD32. It's sort of the compact disc version of the Amiga 1200. Very neat to see one in person because Commodore went out of business like 6 months after they released it and never came out in the US at all. Also really cool is a Mr. FPGA. An FPGA is a field programmable gate array. It's kind of like when you're designing chips, you use this to test out your chip designs before burning them to an actual ASIC. And people have been using this technology lately to make recreations of old computers that are, not a lot of them are left or working, but it essentially electrically recreates it on a hardware level. So it's very cool. They were playing Space War on the Mr. FPGA. Very neat. Also really cool is the Spectrum 128 clone. So if you're not familiar with the Sinclair ZX Spectrum or ZX Spectrum, if you're British, which is the home country of the Spectrum, it was a cheap computer, intended to be low cost. You basically get the masses into computing in the early 80s in Britain, and this Russian clone of the Spectrum is still being produced to this day, which is nuts. Can you believe this? You could buy a brand new ZX Spectrum right now. Like, imagine if they were manufacturing brand new Apple II computers or something like that. It's really stunning. And you can put it in a modern case, which is, what's going on here. This is Duncan from the Vintage Computer Friends. He actually set up the Russian Spectrum clone in a period appropriate case, but you could put it basically in any modern case if you wanted to. So this is totally the way to go if you want a Spectrum 128 in this day and age. And VGA output looks beautiful. If you've ever tried to use a real Spectrum, they have these horrible chiclet keyboards, and they're, you have to load data from a tape drive, and unless you have an iPhone with a headphone jack or an Android phone, it's pretty hard to recreate that play a bunch of weird noises and the computer interprets them as data thing. But honestly, it's much better trying to do it with a flash drive rather than these horrible sound recreation methods. I mean, you could also use a real cassette player if you wanted, but the cassette tapes are just all dying, and it's just a nightmare. So thanks very much to Duncan for showing me the cool Russian ZX Spectrums. I've never seen that. I can't even imagine. I know that right now people are making modern FPGA recreations of vintage game systems, like Analog has released the Analog NT, which is a recreation of the Famicom or original Nintendo Entertainment System NES, and they have the Super NT, which is the equivalent for the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo, as well as the Genesis one that just came out recently, the Mega SG, I think it's called. And that's cool, but how many people are doing it for old computers? The Mr. is a multi-use FPGA, so you can have a bunch of different computers, and that's cool, but the ability to recreate the original hardware in FPGA depends largely on the coding skills of the person working on it. So if you have people that are really anal and recreate things to an obsessive level, then you have a product like Analogs, but FPGAs that are the Mister is open source, so a lot of people are just kind of doing it on their own, and quality level varies kind of a lot. So I don't know, having actual physical hardware is pretty cool. This Russian ZX Spectrum is not like a system on a chip like cheap family clones, but it's functionally equivalent. A lot of the chips are still around, or I mean, it was mostly off-the-shelf parts, so it's pretty easy, relatively speaking, to source parts, and that's rad. I think it's really exciting that you could still play ZX Spectrum games on a brand new computer. They're not making tons of them, but they're still being made, which is just nuts to me. So very exciting. Another thing that was pretty cool is I saw a booth where they were making new hardware for old computers. So this is GG Labs is the name of the group. Apple IIgs, Mac Classic, Commodore 64. They had all kinds of new gear that you could put in to enhance your existing computers. Now I've got a little experience with using new hardware on old computers, but it's mostly flash drives. One of the terrible things about trying to use old computers is floppies are bad. They all die after time, and the heads get messed up, and it's just a nightmare. So it's really exciting to see that kind of thing, coming in play to make it easier to use old computers in modern day times. But these guys are doing things like this guy, GG Labs, making modems for Commodore 64, so you can play on the internet on Commodore 64. That's crazy. Also, I really like this. These kids made their own custom arcade machine, which is running the Tengen NES version of Tetris. Pretty rad. I wish I could have made an arcade machine like that as a kid. Here's Ichigo Jam. This is a Raspberry Pi with a special OS built around BASIC, idea being a $15 computer to learn programming on. Here's a custom pinball machine, very cool. Here's handmade GPS systems. This guy makes his own boards, Japanese dude, very impressive. If you get a chance, check out his website. I was pretty excited by it. Battery-powered custom GPS, like that is nuts. I also saw wheelchairs for kids, and they just made them look like cool Doctor Who stuff. So there's like the Dalek here, and there's the Davros Control Center, evil creator of the Daleks. Very cool stuff. Also, amazing recreations of hardware stuff here. Check it out. This is the Ed 209 from RoboCop. We have the Space Marine from Warhammer. We've got the Fallout Power Armor. Very cool stuff. Really impressive. It's very good. Speaking of cool robot stuff, I was pretty excited to see a Gundam booth there. I know I'm a big dork and everything, but especially a dork for robot cartoons from Japan. So yeah, this Gundam setup was really cool. All the elaborate lights and oh my god, creepy Barbie robot. This is more creepy robots. There were, I think, of the robots that were around, most of them were at least some level of creepy, but yeah, even the robots kind of creeped out by that lady. I don't know, these robots are not enticing at all. R2-D2 though, he's everybody's favorite friendly robot who says swear words that are constantly being beeped out. I do like the sort of astromech droid setup here where they've got a whole bunch of R2-D2s and other, I don't know, R2-D4 or whatever. They're all really impressive looking. Like these could be used in movies. They could, stick out their little antennas and stuff. Oh, this was really cool too. 3D printed puppets from Faustus and Macbeth. Yeah, really cool stuff. Very impressive. I just found a lot of the little handmade stuff at Maker Faire very fun. It was a good time, but I wish it wasn't rainy and miserable. But, Maker Faire was cool. I'm glad that I went.